I'll pay you $500. Just pretend to be my girlfriend for one day. Maya Williams blinked. It had been a long Tuesday, the kind that dragged on like warm molasses. The cafe smelled of cinnamon rolls and bitter coffee. A steady stream of regulars came and went, and Maya moved through them like breath through lungs, quiet, essential, unnoticed. Until chaos walked through the door. The man stumbled in around 2:15. Mid-40s, red-faced, eyes glassy with cheap whiskey. His flannel shirt was half untucked, his words slurred and angry. "Hey, coffee girl," he barked, slamming his fist on the counter. "Where's my damn refill?" Maya, behind the espresso machine, glanced up without breaking rhythm. "Sir, you've already been cut off. We can offer you water. Don't you tell me what I can have, you little—" He stopped short, words snarling in his mouth like barbed wire. "You think you're better than me, huh? Little princess in an apron." "Nye." Around them, the cafe hushed. Chairs stilled. Spoons paused in mid-stir. The other baristas froze. But Maya didn't flinch. She stepped out from behind the counter. "Sir, I need you to leave." He laughed, wobbled forward. "Make me." What happened next was so quick, so quiet, most customers missed it entirely. Maya's hand caught his wrist, twisted gently but firmly, and guided him down into a seat with a grace that looked more like dance than defense. She didn't hurt him, she disarmed him. Her voice never rose. "You have two choices," she said calmly. "Walk out, or the cops come in." The man blinked, stunned. Then, with a grunt, he staggered up and stumbled toward the door, muttering curses all the way out. A few customers applauded under their breath. Maya didn't smile. She only returned to the register, wiped her hands, and resumed taking orders as if nothing had happened. But 10 minutes later, just as calm returned, another emergency stirred. A young man in a suit at table 4 slumped forward, his arm twitching, his coffee spilling across the table. A friend at his side cried out, "Oh my God, he's seizing. Wait, I think he's overdosing." Panic rippled through the room like fire. But again, Maya was already moving. She knelt beside him, eyes scanning. "Sir, can you hear me?" She checked his pulse, loosened his tie, tilted his head gently to the side. "Call 911, she said over her shoulder. Clear and steady. "Tell them adult male, mid-20s, possible opioid reaction, breathing shallow, pulse irregular." Someone ran to get a first aid kit. Maya checked the man's pupils, continued speaking to him softly. "You're okay. You're not alone. Help's coming." In 5 minutes, EMTs arrived and took over. The young man was semi-conscious now. His friend wept in relief. The paramedic turned to Maya. "You a nurse?" "No," she said, brushing hair from her face. "Just someone who used to want to be one." Unnoticed by most, a man seated quietly near the window had watched the entire scene. Elliot Ward, tall, tailored, every detail about him exact. Gray eyes sharp under dark lashes. The kind of man who owned whole buildings most people walked past daily. But in that moment, he wasn't calculating mergers or quarterly profits. He was watching Maya. Later, when the chaos faded, Maya was wiping down table 7 when Elliot approached the counter. "I'll pay you $500, he said simply. "Just pretend to be my girlfriend for one day." "Excuse me?" she said, pushing her pen back behind her ear. Elliot didn't blink. "You heard me." She stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or ask if there was a hidden camera. "You want me to?" "What? Be your date? Just for tonight. My grandmother's birthday. Family gathering." His tone was cool, but his eyes, gray and unreadable, flickered, as if revealing something he didn't say out loud. Maya crossed her arms. "Why me?" Elliot didn't answer immediately. He reached into his coat, pulled out a crisp envelope, and placed it gently on the counter between them. The corner of a $100 bill peeked out like a provocation. "Because you're the only person I've seen all week who didn't flinch when things got chaotic." I don't do dates for money," she said carefully, even as her eyes dropped to the envelope. "It's not that kind of arrangement," he replied. "Just one night. Be my partner, smile, nod, talk if you want, don't if you don't. After that, we never have to speak again." Maya raised a brow. "What do you get out of this?" Elliot hesitated. For a moment, something passed over his features: regret, weariness. My family thinks I'm incapable of human connection, he said finally. Maybe they're right, but I need them to believe otherwise. For one evening. And you think I'm the actress for the job? I think you're real, and that's harder to fake. It was such a strange compliment that Maya nearly laughed. But behind his calm exterior, she sensed something: urgency, maybe even desperation. It wasn't the money that tempted her. It was the mystery, the quiet question behind his eyes. He pulled out an envelope, placed it on the counter. A sliver of cash peeked from inside. Maya stared at it, then back at him. I don't do escort work, she said flatly. It's not that. There's no expectation beyond showing up, playing the part for a few hours, and walking away. She hesitated. 500 wouldn't solve her life, but it could ease it: groceries, prescriptions for grandma, maybe even new shoes for winter. She glanced at the envelope again. Let's say I agree, she said. Do I have to lie about who I am? No. In fact, I'd prefer you didn't. Maya sighed. Fine. But I wear what I want. I talk when I want. And I leave when I say it's time. Deal. She slid the envelope into her apron, not taking her eyes off his. Don't expect me to swoon, Mr. Ward. He smiled faintly. I wouldn't dare. At 6 p.m., a sleek black SUV pulled up to her building. Maya stepped out in a forest green dress, simple, elegant. Her hair was drawn back, her silver bracelet catching the fading sunlight. She carried herself not like someone being paid to impress, but like someone who'd seen too much to care what others thought. Elliot greeted her inside the car with a nod. You look right. Not beautiful, she teased. That too, he admitted, looking out the window. As they drove through the city, silence settled between them, not awkward, just suspended. When the mansion finally appeared at the end of a winding private drive, Maya took a deep breath. This your world? She asked. No, Elliot said, almost a whisper, just where I was born. Before the car door opened, he turned to her. You don't need to pretend tonight. Just be yourself. And who do you think that is? She asked. He held her gaze. Someone who's already more than enough. Then the doors opened, and Maya stepped into the lion's den, not afraid, not pretending, just ready. The grand front doors of the Ward estate parted like a silent judgment. Maya stepped in first, her heels clicking softly against polished marble that stretched into a vast foyer. The air was cool, heavy with the faint scent of lilies and old wood. A sweeping staircase spiraled upward, framed by crystal chandeliers and oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors whose names Maya didn't know and didn't care to. She had only taken 5 steps before the murmurs began. Guests in formal wear dotted the hall like chess pieces, perfectly arranged, carefully poised. Conversations paused as eyes turned toward her and Elliot. Not toward them as a couple, but toward her specifically: skin, dress, presence. A black woman on the arm of Elliot Ward wasn't just unexpected, it was unnerving. Maya felt the heat of their attention. She lifted her chin higher. Elliot's hand barely brushed the small of her back, a signal more than a comfort. Ignore them, he murmured. I'm used to being noticed, she said under her breath. I'm just not usually this well lit when it happens. A well-groomed man approached, balding, tall, with a glass of champagne and a smile 2 sizes too big. Elliot, he said warmly. And this must be? Maya Williams, she answered before Elliot could speak. Her tone was firm, polite. Pleasure to meet you. The man blinked, then recovered. Of course. Lovely to have you here. He didn't ask anything more, just turned, with a slight twitch in his jaw, and melted back into the crowd. Friend of yours? She asked Elliot. Board member. He'll text someone in the next 5 minutes, Elliot said flatly. Probably my mother. Right on cue, Clarissa Ward appeared at the top of the staircase. She descended like a figure carved from porcelain, impeccably styled in a navy silk dress, her silver blonde hair swept into a chignon. At 58, she had the elegance of someone who viewed grace as a moral obligation. Her eyes landed on Maya without a flicker of expression. Elliot, she said, greeting him with a kiss on each cheek. You made it. Then she turned to Maya, offering a hand as delicate as bone china. And you must be? Maya, Elliot interjected smoothly. She's with me. Clarissa's lips curved. Of course she is. Maya shook her hand, noting the coolness, the precision. Clarissa's grip was soft, but her gaze sharp. Well, Clarissa said, turning back to Elliot, your grandmother is expecting you. We've just begun cocktails in the atrium. As they moved down the hallway, past more staring eyes and whispered assumptions, Maya noticed her reflection in one of the gilded mirrors. She looked composed, serene, unbothered, but inside, she catalogued every glance, every nod that lingered just a second too long. It wasn't insecurity, it was awareness, the kind born from years of navigating spaces that weren't built for her. They entered the atrium, a sprawling, glass-walled room overlooking the garden. There, standing near a long mahogany table covered in canapes and champagne flutes, was Evelyn Ward. She was smaller than Maya expected, wrapped in a plum-colored shawl, her white curls softly framing a face that bore its years with grace, not apology. When she saw Elliot, her eyes lit up. "There's my handsome boy," she said, arms outstretched. Elliot embraced her, and for the first time that evening, his shoulders visibly softened. "This," he said, turning, "is Maya." Evelyn's eyes shifted to Maya, and unlike the others, they didn't scan her. They simply looked, curious, present, alive. "Maya," she repeated with a smile. "Lovely name." "And what do you do, dear?" Maya smiled gently. "I serve coffee, sometimes justice, occasionally both at the same time." Evelyn laughed. It was light, unforced. "Then you're far more useful than anyone in this room." Clarissa coughed behind them. Evelyn took Maya's hand and patted it. "Come, sit with me, Elliot. Go get your grandmother some cake." Maya cast a glance at Elliot, who nodded once before moving away. She followed Evelyn to a cushioned bench near the window. "I imagine this wasn't your idea," Evelyn said softly. Maya didn't flinch. "No, ma'am. But I'm not easily pushed." "I can see that." Evelyn studied her face, then smiled. "I've lived long enough to know when a woman enters a room with her own name and doesn't wait for permission." Maya didn't know what to say to that, so she let the silence bloom. It was a good silence, the kind that fills, not presses. From across the room, Elliot watched the two of them, a faint crease in his brow. He could read boardroom postures, investment trends, and mergers across continents, but the gentle unfolding of trust between his grandmother and a woman he'd known for only a few hours, that was new terrain. The remainder of the evening unfolded in a strange rhythm. Maya met cousins and cousins-in-law. She endured questions wrapped in compliments. "Your dress is so bold," and "You speak so well." Each time, she smiled. Not because she had to, but because it disarmed them. At dinner, Elliot pulled out her chair. Small gesture, massive ripple. Clarissa watched, sipped wine, said nothing. Later, as dessert was served, someone asked Maya where she went to school. "CUNY, pre-nursing program." "Oh," came the reply, tight-lipped and sweet. "Not Columbia?" "No, I like to graduate without a mortgage on my soul." A few chuckled, a few didn't. By the end of the night, Maya's feet ached, but her spine remained straight. Elliot stood beside her as guests departed, whispering goodbyes, trading theories. Clarissa approached once more. "Thank you for coming, Maya," she said with a gracious tone that barely masked dismissal. "Thank you for having me," Maya replied, equally pleasant. "It's been illuminating." Clarissa's lips twitched. "Yes, I imagine it has." Elliot said nothing, but as they walked back toward the foyer, his hand brushed hers. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Maya nodded. "You?" "I will be." "Ah." Then the butler opened the door, and the night wrapped around them once more. If Maya's strength spoke to you, like this video and drop a comment with where you're watching from. You never know who nearby might be watching with you. The SUV pulled away from the glowing estate and into the cool hush of the Upper East Side night. Inside the car, the air felt heavier than it had on the ride over, like the silence was no longer companionable, but contemplative. Maya sat with her hands folded in her lap, her gaze fixed on the passing brownstones outside. The lights from the city slipped across her face in slivers, gold, blue, red. a soft reminder that she was leaving a world she had entered only hours earlier. A world built of polished marble and carefully curated lies. Elliot didn't speak at first. His hands rested on his thighs, fingers occasionally tapping, like a man silently replaying a meeting that hadn't gone the way he'd hoped. "You held your own," he said finally, his voice low. "Better than I did." Maya didn't turn. "I wasn't there to impress them." "No, but you still did." That made her glance over. "Did I? Because your mother looked like she was trying to calculate the exact second she could have me escorted out without causing a scene." He almost smiled. "That's her default expression." Maya leaned back against the seat. "What about your grandmother? She's different." She is," Elliot agreed, his voice softer now. "She raised me more than my parents did. After my mother's divorce, she moved in. We were all broken in our own ways, but she was the one who held us upright." "That explains the warmth," Maya said. "She looks at you like she remembers the little boy version of you." "She does," Elliot said, "and sometimes I think she misses him more than I do." They fell silent again, this time gentler. Outside, the city pulsed. Inside, something subtle had shifted between them, not romance, not yet, but something that might serve as its soil, respect, and perhaps recognition. The car pulled up to Maya's building in Harlem, and she moved to unbuckle her seatbelt. Elliot stopped her with a question. "Are you free tomorrow?" She paused. "Why?" "I'd like to take you to lunch. No contracts. No family watching." Maya looked at him for a moment, weighing the sincerity in his face. "You're asking me on a date?" "No. I'm asking you to eat lunch," he replied, but there was a faint upward curl to his mouth. "Whatever happens after is yours to define." She hesitated. Then, "Maybe, if I don't have to wrestle another drunk or stop someone's heart from giving out." Elliot laughed softly. "Deal." Maya stepped out into the night air, the door closing behind her with a muffled click. She didn't look back. The next morning, the sun rose over Harlem like a slow smile, and Maya was already awake. She had made oatmeal for her grandmother, Mrs. Geraldine Washington, who sat at the kitchen table in a faded pink robe, humming an old Sam Cooke song under her breath. "So," her grandmother said between sips of tea, "you were out late last night." Maya raised an eyebrow. "You always say you're asleep by 10. Geraldine gave a look over her glasses. "I'm asleep, not blind." "You walked in glowing." "What's his name?" Maya sighed. "It's not like that. It never is. Until it is." "No." Maya busied herself at the sink, scrubbing a pan that didn't need scrubbing. "He's different, but that's not the point. It was a job. A man takes you to a mansion, calls you beautiful in front of his people, and it's a job?" Geraldine leaned forward. "Sounds like a calling, baby." Maya smiled despite herself. "He asked me to lunch." "And you said?" "I said maybe." Her grandmother nodded, satisfied. "Good. Men like that don't expect maybes. They expect yes or no. Giving them a maybe? That reminds them they still have work to do." Elliot, meanwhile, sat in his downtown office, a sleek space with floor-to-ceiling glass that overlooked the city he claimed to know and rule. But he wasn't reading stock reports or answering board emails. He was watching the security footage from the night before. Not from the party, but from the cameras hidden in the lobby of the estate. One showed Maya handling the drunk man at the cafe. Another the moment she cradled the overdosing customer. He had asked the cafe manager to send it over. He told himself it was for context. But he watched those clips like they were a study, like she was a kind of truth he didn't know how to hold. A knock at the door broke the silence. Clarissa entered, poised as always, holding a tablet and a look of professional disapproval. "We need to talk about last night," she said. Elliot turned. "Mother, spare me the chivalry," Clarissa said coolly. "I'm not here to criticize. Not yet. I'm here to understand." "There's nothing to understand," he said. "Maya came with me." She handled herself with grace and dignity. Unlike most people in that room, Clarissa sat across from him, folding her hands. "Who is she?" "A woman I respect." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting." Clarissa stared at him for a long moment. Then softly, "You know what they're saying, don't you?" "I do. They're not kind. They rarely are." Clarissa studied her son. For a moment, something flickered across her expression, something almost human. Then she stood. "If you're going to fall in love with someone like her, Elliot, Don't make it a performance. Don't make it something you walk away from when the noise gets too loud. He looked up. And what if I already can't? Clarice supposed. Then you better decide fast whether you're strong enough to stay when everything else tells you to leave. She walked out without another word. That afternoon, Maya stood at the front of the cafe again, apron on, hair tied back. Business as usual. Then the bell over the door rang. She turned. And there he was, Elliot Ward. No suit. Just jeans, a gray button-down, and a tired kind of smile. Still serving coffee? He asked. Still saving lives, she replied. He held out a small brown bag. Lunch, pastrami on rye, I remembered. She blinked. You remembered? He shrugged. You mentioned it, in passing, 2 days ago. She took the bag. You don't seem like the listening type. I wasn't, until I met you. The cafe was quiet in the lull between the lunch rush and the first wave of evening commuters. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows, catching on the dust motes like lazy confetti. Maya stood behind the counter with Elliot sitting on one of the stools, a billionaire looking oddly at home among chipped mugs and paper napkins. He had brought her pastrami on rye, still warm. She had poured him a mug of the house blend, dark and strong. For a moment, it almost felt like two old friends sharing a break. You don't belong here, he said softly, glancing around the small cafe. She raised an eyebrow. And you do? His lips quirked. Touché. I mean, you're wasted here. You're quick, smart, trained. Why aren't you back in school? Maya wiped down the counter slowly. Because people get sick. Because bills don't wait for degrees. Because sometimes being good at saving lives doesn't make life easier to live. She looked up at him. You, of all people, should know that. Elliot didn't answer right away. He stared at his coffee like it might contain a strategy he hadn't tried yet. I do know that, he said finally. Too well. For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. Outside, a bus hissed to a stop. Then Maya tilted her head. Why me? What? You had your pick of whoever. People who'd have jumped at the chance to dress up and stand next to you at your grandmother's party. Why walk into a cafe and hand me an envelope? Elliot looked at her. Really looked. Because you're not afraid. Maya snorted softly. I'm afraid all the time, I just don't show it. That's what I mean. His gaze softened. You're not afraid to be seen. I haven't met many people like that. She felt his words land somewhere she didn't want them to. You don't know me, she said quickly. I'm trying to, he said simply. Before she could respond, the cafe door swung open. A teenage boy stumbled in, eyes wide and unfocused. His skin was pale, sweat slicking his brow. He clutched his chest and gasped. Maya was already moving. Call 911, she told the barista as she crossed the floor. You, honey, sit down. Breathe. She knelt in front of the boy, her hands steady, her voice a calm anchor. You're okay. Tell me what you took. The boy shook his head, tears spilling. Pills. Just. She checked his pulse fast but thready, then loosened his jacket and tilted his head back. Stay with me, she murmured. You're going to be okay. Help is on the way. The barista's hands shook as he dialed. Elliot was already behind Maya, phone in hand, relaying details to dispatch like he was closing a deal. Male, late teens, possible overdose, breathing but shallow. We're at 109th and Lenox. Maya looked up at him once, just a flicker, and he met her eyes, steady, no panic, no judgment, just there. By the time the EMTs arrived, the boy was breathing more evenly, his hand clutching Maya's like a lifeline. Thank you, he whispered as they lifted him onto the stretcher. Maya squeezed his hand gently. You're welcome. You're stronger than you think. The paramedic looked at her. You sure you're not a nurse? She shook her head. Not anymore. When they were gone, Maya stood slowly, brushing her palms on her apron. The cafe had fallen silent again. People stared at her the way they had at the party, except now. There was no judgment. Just awe. Elliot set his phone down on the counter. That's the second time I've seen you do that, he said quietly. Maya gave him a half smile. Old habits die hard. No, he said. Real habits don't die at all. They're who you are. She felt the warmth of his words before she could stop herself. Don't romanticize it. It's just training. It's grace under fire, he said. And it's rare. Maya turned away, busying herself with a rag she didn't need. Why are you really here, Elliot? You already got your show and tell at the mansion. You saw me play the part. I didn't hire you for a part, he said softly. I asked you because I needed someone real. And then I found you. Maya's hands stilled. She looked at him over her shoulder. You talk like a man who's used to getting what he wants. I am. And that's why this scares me. They held each other's gaze for a heartbeat too long. Then Maya broke it, pulling off her apron. I need to clock out. Let me walk you home, he offered. She hesitated, then nodded once. They walked through Harlem as dusk slid in, soft and cool. The neighborhood was alive with small joys, a group of kids playing double dutch, a man at the corner selling incense, the smell of fried chicken drifting from a diner. Maya greeted people as they passed, nodding, smiling, exchanging quick words. Elliot noticed how she belonged here, how the world seemed to fold around her like a familiar coat. This is your place, he said quietly. It's home, she replied. It's messy and loud and real. That's why I stay. Does it ever feel small? Sometimes, she admitted. But I'd rather feel small in a place that's mine than lost in a place that's not. They reached her building, a worn brownstone with flower boxes in the windows. She paused at the steps, turning to him. You don't have to keep doing this, she said. Doing what? Showing up. Maybe I do, he said. She exhaled, shaking her head with a small smile. Good night, Mr. Ward. Good night, Maya. No. She climbed the steps, her silver bracelet catching the last of the light. He stood on the sidewalk watching her go, hands in his pockets, something like resolve settling into his chest. For the first time in years, Elliot Ward didn't know the end of the story he had just begun. The next morning broke gently over Manhattan, casting long slants of gold through the apartment windows. Maya stood barefoot in her kitchen, pouring coffee into a chipped mug, steam curling into the air like a whisper. Geraldine, her grandmother, sat at the table with a knit shawl over her shoulders and the New York Daily News unfolded before her. You were quiet coming in last night, Geraldine said without looking up. I didn't want to wake you, Maya replied, sipping her coffee. Didn't need to. My knees told me you were smiling. Maya gave a soft laugh. They talk that much, huh? Like gossiping church ladies. Maya joined her at the table. He walked me home. We talked. That's all. Geraldine folded her paper, eyes twinkling. And what did he say? That I scare him. Geraldine's brows lifted. Well now, that's a start. Maya stirred her coffee, watching the swirl settle. It's not like that, Nana. I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. He's complicated. Baby, Geraldine said, leaning closer. Every man worth a damn is. You just have to decide if his kind of complicated matches your kind of peace. Maya thought about that for a long moment. She didn't reply. Downtown, in the heart of glass towers and clean suits, Elliot sat in his corner office overlooking the city. But his eyes weren't on the skyline. They were on a photograph. It was worn at the edges, tucked behind a drawer he rarely opened. A photo of him at age 10, sitting on his grandmother's lap, both laughing in a garden that no longer existed. Evelyn Ward looked younger, stronger. Behind them, Clarissa stood stiffly, her smile practiced, arms crossed. The door opened, breaking his reverie. It was Andrew Roth, his CFO and oldest friend from prep school. You've got a problem, Andrew said flatly. Elliot raised an eyebrow. You always lead with warmth. Andrew dropped a file on the desk. Page 3. Social media traction report. Scroll down. Elliot scanned the page, his eyes narrowed. There it was, photos, from the party, of him and Maya. Her hand on his arm. Her laughing with Evelyn. The headline, Ward Heirs Mysterious Plus, 1. Who is the woman beside Manhattan's most eligible billionaire? Below it, the comment threads boiled. Some were curious, others, not kind. Elliot closed the file. It was a private event. Andrew folded his arms. Nothing's private when you're in line to run a $12 billion company, especially not when the board's already jumpy about your emotional detachment. End close. I don't care what they think. You need to, Andrew said. You want them to back your next expansion? You want to keep Evelyn's legacy intact? Then you have to stop playing the rebel prince. Who she is matters. Elliot stood slowly. Who she is the only thing that does matter. Andrew's jaw tightened. You're right. But don't expect the world to agree. Maya arrived at work that day to find a bouquet on the counter. It was simple sunflowers, wild daisies, and baby's breath. No card, just a small tag that read, "For your fire, E." Tasha, the other barista on shift, whistled low. Girl, that's some billionaire energy right there. Maya rolled her eyes. It's just flowers. It's intentions in a vase, is what it is, Tasha said. You better not play coy if that man is trying. But Maya wasn't smiling. Something had shifted in her since that morning. A sense of caution, of inevitability. She knew this pattern. She'd seen it in her mother's life. The way men brought gifts before storms. The way adoration could turn sour the moment the woman had her own name. Still, she took the flowers home. That evening, as she climbed the steps to her apartment, her phone buzzed. Elliot. Dinner? Just us. No suits. No noise. Maya, you cooking? Elliot, God no, but I know a place. Oh. The place was a small Italian restaurant tucked into a quiet corner of the West Village, candlelit, with red checkered tablecloths and an old man playing Sinatra on a guitar. Maya arrived in jeans and a fitted jacket. Elliot wore the same. The hostess didn't blink at their difference in skin tone or stature, just smiled and showed them to a quiet booth in the back. This is normal, Maya said, glancing around. That's the point. They ordered wine, talked about nothing at first, music, favorite pizza toppings, the best parks in the city. Then Elliot leaned back, looking at her thoughtfully. You ever think about going back? To nursing? All the time, she said. I miss it. But right now, my grandma needs me. And debt isn't something you heal with gauze. He nodded. Would you go back if you had the chance? I would, she said, but I won't beg the world to make room for me. If I return, it'll be on my own 2 feet. Row. He looked down at his wine. That's what I admire. Maya smiled faintly. Is that what this is? Admiration? Elliot looked up. I think I'm past that already. The music played on. The lights dimmed. For the first time in years, Maya allowed herself to lean forward, to meet someone halfway. Outside, the night waited, but inside, something had begun to warm between them, not rushed, not false, just real. And real, Maya knew, was the most dangerous thing of all. Saturday morning crept in with gray skies and the smell of rain in the air. Maya stood by the open window of her bedroom, pulling in the scent of wet pavement and old sycamore trees lining the street below. Harlem had its own rhythm, slow but steady, loud but loving, the kind of rhythm you could lose your pain in if you moved with it long enough. She was still thinking about the night before, about Elliot's words. I think I'm past admiration already. Huh. That wasn't the kind of thing a man like him said lightly. And yet, Maya knew better than to trust what came easily, not because she was jaded, but because she had learned that when something seems too sweet, it's probably been dipped in someone else's expectation. Geraldine shuffled into the kitchen, already dressed for church bingo, in her best purple dress and white orthopedic shoes. You were glowing again last night, she teased. I was eating carbs, Nana. Anyone glows after fresh pasta. Geraldine chuckled as she poured herself coffee. You're dancing with it, baby. Just don't step too close unless you're ready to fall. Maya kissed her grandmother on the cheek. I always watch my feet. Across town, Elliot stood in his grandmother Evelyn's sunroom, where the morning light filtered through sheer curtains onto stacks of books and flower pots. Evelyn sat in her usual chair, a worn leather recliner older than Elliot himself. She watched him with that quiet, knowing gaze. You like her, she said without preamble. He didn't pretend to misunderstand. I do. She's not from this world, Elliot, but she doesn't seem afraid of it. That's rare. She's not afraid of anything, Elliot said. No, child. She is, but she's not ruled by it. Elliot lowered himself into the armchair across from her. Mother doesn't approve. Izzy. She never approves of anything that didn't come with a legacy name or a country club membership. She thinks this could hurt the family. Evelyn gave a sharp snort. The family survived your father's affair. my sister's embezzlement, and your cousin's rehab stints. A woman like Maya won't break us. She thinks I'm playing. Evelyn leaned forward. Are you? Elliot met her eyes. No. Evelyn nodded. Then stop hiding. If you care for her, let it be known. But if you don't intend to stand when the storms come, walk away now. Don't you dare ask her to trust you, and then run when the whispers get loud. Later that afternoon, Maya's phone buzzed. Elliot, dinner with Evelyn. Just the three of us. Tomorrow night. You in? She stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered over the reply button. Maya, you sure that's a good idea? Elliot, I'm not playing games. I'm showing you my world. I want you in it. After a moment, she replied. Then I'm in. Sunday night arrived like a hush after a long song. Elliot picked Maya up in a vintage navy blue Cadillac, his grandmother's choice. A nod to old-world elegance. He wore no tie. Just a crisp white shirt and navy slacks. Maya wore a deep wine-colored dress. Elegant but unpretentious. Her curls pinned up with a few loose tendrils softening her jaw. You look like poetry, he whispered when she stepped into the car. She smiled. You always talk like a man trying to rewrite a story he regrets. My God, he chuckled. Maybe I am. They arrived at Evelyn's townhouse just as twilight began to fade. Inside, the dining room was already set three-place settings. White linen, gold trim, a modest vase of gardenias at the center. Evelyn greeted Maya with a kiss on the cheek. You came. Good. I was afraid Elliot would send an apology wrapped in excuses. Thank you for having me, Maya said, meaning it. Dinner was roasted chicken, rosemary potatoes, green beans, and red wine that Evelyn poured herself with steady hands. Conversation flowed easily. Books, music, the best jazz clubs in Harlem. Maya held her own, gracious and grounded, even as Evelyn subtly tested her with questions that required more than charm. You've seen a lot, Evelyn said at one point. I've lived a lot, Maya replied simply. And yet you're not bitter. I don't carry what I can't use. Elliot looked at her then with something deeper than admiration, like gratitude. After dessert, Evelyn excused herself for a phone call. Maya and Elliot moved to the sitting room, where a fire crackled low in the hearth. I've never seen my grandmother that relaxed with someone new, Elliot said. She's a sharp woman, Maya said. She listens with her eyes. I told her I wasn't pretending with you. Maya turned to face him. And are you? No. She nodded slowly. Then let's be clear. I'm not a trophy. I'm not a statement. I don't want to be anyone's rebellion or redemption. I'm a person, whole and flawed, and I won't be reshaped to fit anyone's frame. Elliot reached for her hand. I don't want to change you, Maya. I just want to know you. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then, okay, it was just one word, but in it, a door creaked open. A door Maya had kept locked for a long, long time. The following week passed with the slow pull of a tide, each day a little closer, each evening layered with quiet anticipation. Elliot began frequenting the cafe more often, not in the grand, theatrical way billionaires make statements, but in the quiet, steady way someone chooses presence. He'd show up during the late afternoon lull. No entourage, no headlines, just him, a dark coat, and that tired look he only seemed to shed when Maya was nearby. Maya didn't let herself get swept up in it. Not completely. She still folded her laundry every Sunday, still counted her tips with quiet precision, still walked Geraldine to her bingo nights at the community center. But somewhere between the espresso machine and the way Elliot's hand sometimes lingered a second too long on the counter, she began to feel, noticed. Not admired, not worshipped, sane. One Thursday afternoon, she caught him watching her through the cafe window, a half smile tugging at the corner of his mouth like a man who had stumbled into the possibility of peace. Your boyfriend's back, Tasha whispered, elbowing her in the ribs. He's not my boyfriend, Maya muttered. Uh-huh. Tell that to the way you've reapplied that lip gloss twice in 10 minutes. Maya rolled her eyes, but she didn't argue. That evening, Maya stepped out of the cafe after her shift and found Elliot leaning against a black Lincoln parked at the curb. I have a surprise, he said. She raised a brow. If it's dinner in a 94-floor restaurant with gold napkins, I'm out. He grinned. It's better. He opened the door, and she slid in. 20 minutes later, they pulled up in front of a modest brick building in Brooklyn, a jazz lounge, old and unassuming, tucked between a laundromat and a closed-down bakery. Inside, the world was candlelit and smoky. A trio played soft brass in the corner, and the room was filled with the scent of bourbon and memory. Couples swayed slowly in the shadows. Conversations were murmurs, not performances. "This is my sanctuary," Elliot said as they sat in a booth near the back. "You've got soul ward. I'm shocked." His smirked. "Even billionaire bleed." They sipped bourbon, letting the music fill the spaces between words. Maya's fingers tapped on the rim of her glass, matching the rhythm of the bass. "You know," she said, "you're not what I expected." "Neither are you," he said. "I expected anger, and maybe a little judgment. And instead you got?" "Steel wrapped in silk." She looked away, biting back a smile. Elliot leaned in, voice quieter. "Can I ask you something?" Maya nodded. "Why'd you quit nursing? The real reason, not the bills, not the time." She sighed, her shoulders tightening. "There was a boy, 14, gunshot wound, gang initiation. I held pressure to his chest for 8 minutes. He didn't make it." Elliot didn't interrupt. "I walked into the locker room after and screamed until my throat burned, and no one came, not a soul. That night, I walked out and didn't go back." He reached across the table, fingers brushing hers. "You saved him the only way you could. You gave him comfort." "I failed him," she whispered. "No," Elliot said. "The world did." A beat passed between them. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't theatrical. It was honest. Meanwhile, uptown, Clarissa Ward sat in a corner office in Midtown Manhattan, flipping through a printed report. Her assistant hovered nearby, nervous. "This can't be stopped?" Clarissa asked. "No, ma'am. The photos are already circulating. People are asking questions. About Maya. About her past. Some digging into her family." Clarissa set the pages down. Her jaw was tight. "Make a few calls, quiet ones. I want to know everything about her, every job, every address, every friend." The assistant hesitated. "And Elliot? Leave him to me." She turned her chair to the window, her reflection superimposed against the city skyline. In her world, emotions were liabilities. Attachments were fractures waiting to split open. And Maya Williams? She was a crack, a visible one. 3 days later, Maya was at the grocery store with Geraldine, pushing a cart filled with plantains, cornbread mix, and Geraldine's favorite lemon soda. They were laughing. Maya had just confessed her high school crush on Usher when a woman approached. She was in her 50s, white, manicured, dressed in that uptown casual way that still cost more than Maya's rent. "You're Maya, right?" she asked, smiling tightly. Maya blinked. "Yes? I saw you at the ward party. Lovely dress. But I thought you were the help." Imagine my surprise when I heard otherwise. Geraldine's grip tightened on the cart. Maya smiled politely. "Well, you're not the first to mistake my dignity for service." The woman laughed awkwardly, then left. Geraldine looked up at Maya. "I'm fine," Maya said softly. But she wasn't. Not entirely. Because for all the warmth Elliot brought into her life, the cold was starting to catch up. Sunday morning arrived with an overcast sky and the taste of autumn in the air. The trees along Malcolm X Boulevard were just beginning to turn red, rust, and ochre flashing between brick buildings and stoop railings. Maya stood on the church steps with Geraldine after service, greeting neighbors as the congregation spilled out with handshakes and laughter. "Pastor Raymond was on fire today," Geraldine said, fixing her hat. "Second sermon this month that made me want to give up caffeine and cussing," Maya joked. "You're lying," Geraldine said, grinning. "But it's cute you tried." They were walking home with grocery bags when Maya's phone buzzed. It was a text from Elliot. "Can you come by tonight? Something's happened." Maya frowned. "Maya, everything okay?" Elliot, "No, but I need to see you." Her stomach tightened. She told Geraldine she'd be back before dark, kissed her cheek, and hailed a cab. She didn't know why, but her chest felt heavy like the moment just before a storm when the sky forgets how to breathe. Elliot's penthouse was quiet when she arrived. No staff, no music. Just him, sitting alone at the kitchen island, sleeves rolled to his elbows, a glass of scotch untouched beside him. She dropped her coat on the chair. "What's going on?" He looked at her, his eyes more tired than she'd ever seen. "Someone leaked your hospital file." Maya froze. "What?" "The boy. The shooting. Everything. They're circulating it through private networks, investors, board members, maybe the press by tomorrow." Maya felt like the ground had shifted under her feet. "How did they get it?" "Clarissa," he said. "She won't admit it, but it's her. I know how she moves." Maya laughed bitterly. "Of course, she couldn't go after you, so she went after the black girl from Harlem." Elliot stood, reaching for her, but Maya stepped back. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have seen it coming." "No, Elliot, you should have stopped it." His face dropped. "I tried. I'm trying now." She turned away, arms folded tight across her chest. "You think trying fixes what's been done? They'll paint me as reckless, unstable. They'll drag my name through a system that already looks at women like me with suspicion." "You did nothing wrong." "That doesn't matter," Maya said, voice rising. "In your world, it's not about truth, it's about perception." "Magger." Silence pressed between them. Then she whispered, "I can't survive being erased again." Elliot stepped forward. "Then don't walk away. Let me help." She looked at him, something raw in her eyes. "Can you make it go away?" He hesitated. That hesitation was an answer. Maya grabbed her coat. "I shouldn't have come. I forgot what this was." Elliot reached for her arm. Gentle. "It's not a performance, Maya. I care about you." She pulled away. "Then prove it." And she walked out. That night, Elliot called his grandmother. Evelyn answered on the second ring. "What did she say?" "She left." There was a pause. "Then maybe it's time you stopped being the man everyone expects and became the man she needs." The next morning, the headlines hit. "Nurse walked out after teen died. Billionaire's girlfriend has a past." The article wasn't vicious, it was clinical, dispassionate. But the subtext was clear. Doubt. Mistrust. A framing Maya had fought her whole life. She stood outside the cafe, reading it on her cracked screen. The image of her in her scrubs, exhausted, a smear of blood on her collar, stared back at her. They had used a photo from the worst night of her life. Tasha came outside, fuming. "You want me to call someone? I got cousins who know things." Maya managed a laugh. "I don't need revenge. I need truth." "Then you better speak it." "Oh." Later that afternoon, Maya returned to her apartment to find Geraldine on the couch, her Bible open but unread. The TV was off. The air was too still. "You saw it?" Maya asked. Geraldine nodded. "I didn't do anything wrong, Nana." "I know, baby. But they'll believe I did." Geraldine patted the cushion beside her. Maya sat down, resting her head on her grandmother's shoulder. "I've lived through enough history to know one thing," Geraldine said softly. "The truth don't walk through the front door. It fights its way in." Maya closed her eyes. "I'm tired of fighting." "You're not fighting for yourself anymore," Geraldine said. "You're fighting for the next black girl in scrubs who saves a life and still gets questioned." That night, Maya sat on her stoop, watching the city move. Cars passed. Dogs barked. A little girl ran down the sidewalk, chasing a balloon. Elliot's car pulled up. He didn't get out right away, just sat there. Finally, Maya stood, walking to the curb. She opened the passenger door and slid in. Neither spoke for a long time. Then Elliot said, "I've called every news outlet. I've issued statements. I've hired attorneys. But I know that's not enough." She looked at him, waiting. "So, I'm going on record. A press conference. Tomorrow. I'm naming names. Calling it what it is. Smear campaign. Racial bias. Elitism. All of it." She blinked. "You're risking the board. Your company. Your family." I'm risking them," he said. "Not you." Maya leaned back in the seat. The storm wasn't over. But maybe, finally, she wasn't walking through it alone. Elliot Ward stood at the podium in front of a forest of microphones, his hands resting lightly on the edge as a sea of reporters shifted in their seats. Behind him, the Manhattan skyline loomed symbolic, immovable, powerful. But his face wasn't the usual mask of corporate polish. It was tired, Purposeful. Human. He cleared his throat once. Cameras clicked like insects. Good morning. My name is Elliot Ward. I am the CEO of Ward and Kinley Holdings. Today, I'm not speaking on behalf of the company. I'm speaking as a man who believes in truth and who is done being silent. The room stilled. Last week, personal records belonging to a woman I deeply respect, Maya Williams, were leaked to private news outlets. Records that should have remained confidential, protected by both the law and basic human decency. Oh, flashes exploded from cameras. She was a nurse, a good one. She did her job with courage and grace. And when a teenage boy died on her watch, the system failed her just as it has failed countless other women of color asked to carry more than their share. Whispers rippled through the room. I won't allow a smear campaign born out of fear and elitism to define her. I won't let the ghosts of this industry decide who gets to be forgiven and who gets to be crucified. He paused, then added, and if that means risking my seat at the table, so be it. A murmur swept through the press corps. I stand by Maya Williams, not because it's easy, not because it's good PR, but because it's right. With that, he stepped down. No questions, no spin, just truth. Maya watched the live stream from the back of the cafe, phone gripped in her hand, heart pounding. Tasha stood beside her, wiping her eyes with the edge of her apron. Girl, that man's not playing. Who is it? Maya didn't reply. She couldn't speak. In all the years of keeping her dignity stitched tight, no one had ever stood like that for her. Not in the open, not with cameras watching. Geraldine called 3 minutes later. He did it. Her voice cracked. He really did it. Maya sank into the chair by the window. Yeah, she whispered. He did. But not everyone was applauding. Across the city, in an office framed with framed degrees and glass furniture, Clarissa Ward scrolled through the press conference transcript with a hand that trembled ever so slightly. Her assistant lingered by the doorway. Should I leave? Clarissa snapped. She turned to the large portrait on her office wall, her father in uniform, standing proudly in front of the Ward family estate, the symbol of everything she'd sacrificed to preserve. Elliot's stunt, as she saw it, had cracked that foundation. Not because of Maya, but because the boy who used to follow her around in velvet blazers had finally chosen someone else's dignity over the family's image. And in Clarissa's world, that was betrayal. Meanwhile, Evelyn Ward watched the same conference from the comfort of her sunroom, her tea cooling in her lap. She didn't flinch. She didn't frown. She smiled. When her butler entered, she simply said, "Tell the press I'll be issuing my own statement this week." It's time I reminded this city who really built the Ward name. Yes, ma'am. Back at the cafe, Maya found Elliot waiting outside just after closing. He didn't say anything as she stepped out, locking the door behind her. He just offered her a quiet look, steady, like a foundation that wouldn't crack under pressure. You didn't have to do that, she said. I did. Maya crossed her arms. You know you just made enemies out of half your board. I've had enemies before. I sleep fine. She smiled slightly, but her voice was still cautious. You put your name on my past. That doesn't disappear. I didn't put my name on anything, he said. I just reminded people what yours meant. The streetlight above them flickered as the wind picked up, swirling leaves around their feet. Maya's voice lowered. I've fought so hard not to need anyone. Elliot nodded. You still don't. That's the thing. But I want to be someone who stands beside you while you fight. She looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached for his hand. Their fingers laced together, not a romantic gesture, not yet but one of mutual armor. That night, news outlets buzzed with reactions. Some praised Elliot's courage, others accused him of reckless behavior. The financial press speculated about the board's next moves. Social media exploded with both support and vitriol. But something else happened too. Former patients of Maya's began speaking up online. Stories of her calm under pressure, her empathy, her care in the worst moments of people's lives. A nurse like her made me feel like a person again. She stayed with my mother when no one else would. I don't remember her name, but I remember her kindness. That was her. By morning, the #NumberStandWithMaya was trending, and the world had shifted just a little. Inside a quiet apartment in Harlem, Maya sat with Geraldine over breakfast. The old woman's hand closed over her granddaughter's. You stood your ground, baby. Maya looked down at their fingers. No, she said softly. We did. And this time, she didn't feel like the story was being written for her. She felt like she was finally holding the pen. Elliot's public stand sent waves rippling through Manhattan's elite. While some saw it as a bold act of integrity, others viewed it as a reckless betrayal of his pedigree. The Ward name was being whispered in private clubs and corporate corridors, not with awe, but with suspicion. And Clarissa Ward was not one to let silence speak louder than her own voice. Which is why, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, Maya received an unexpected invitation. A formal dinner. At Clarissa's estate, addressed directly to her, printed on ivory cardstock, with the Ward family crest embossed in gold. Maya stared at the letter as if it were a summons from a courtroom. She's calling you out, Tasha said that evening at the cafe. That ain't no dinner. That's a duel with silverware. Maya folded the invitation carefully. I know. You gonna go? I don't know. But she did. Deep down, she knew she couldn't run from the wolves and still claim to own the forest. Sunday evening came with a steady drizzle, misting the car windows as Elliot drove her through the winding roads of Westchester. He glanced at her, often silent, unreadable. You sure you're up for this? He asked. I have to be. He nodded. You don't have to play her game. I'm not playing, Maya said. I'm showing her I'm not afraid of the table she built. They arrived at the estate just past sunset. The Ward home stood like a monument, stone columns, manicured hedges, and a flagstone driveway that echoed under the wheels. The butler greeted them with a nod, guiding them through dark paneled halls into a grand dining room. Clarissa was already seated at the head of the table. She stood as they entered, her smile polite but cold. Elliot, Miss Williams, thank you for coming. Maya met her gaze without flinching. Thank you for the invitation. Of course, I thought it was time we dined, as a family. They took their seats. The table was set for 5, though only 3 places were occupied. Elliot, Maya, and Clarissa. 2 empty chairs sat untouched. Mother not joining us? Elliot asked, his voice low. She sends her regrets. A bit under the weather. Maya didn't miss the tension beneath the words. Dinner was a ballet of quiet tension: filet mignon, asparagus with truffle oil, roasted fingerling potatoes, all prepared with meticulous care. And yet, the room was colder than the steel cutlery. Clarissa opened her offensive slowly. So, Maya, she said, sipping her wine, I understand you were once in nursing. That must have been intense. Maya cut into her steak. It taught me how fragile life is, and how strong people can be, even when the system forgets them. Indeed, Clarissa said with a tight smile, but you chose to leave that world behind. I didn't choose to leave. I chose not to be broken by it. A flicker of something passed through Clarissa's eyes. Elliot watched the exchange without interrupting. Clarissa continued, You've become quite the name lately. Trending, I hear. I didn't ask for that, Maya said, but I won't run from it either. Good, Clarissa said, placing her glass down with a soft clink, because this family has always been under scrutiny. Every word, every step, every companion is judged. That's not racism, Maya. That's just the cost of legacy. Maya leaned forward slightly. And who gets to own legacy, Clarissa? Who gets to inherit respect without proving they deserve it? Clarissa's jaw stiffened. Elliot finally spoke. Maya's earned everything she has. You don't have to like her, but you will respect her. I respected her enough to invite her here, Clarissa snapped. No, Maya said, voice calm. You invited me here to see if I would shrink. The silence that followed was thunderous. And then, the butler re-entered, whispering something into Clarissa's ear. She stood abruptly. Excuse me a moment. As she exited the room, Maya looked down at the plate before her. Half-eaten. Ornate. Cold. I wasn't raised for this, she said, not looking at Elliot. The rooms where people smile while measuring your worth in silence. You don't need to be raised for it, Elliot said. You were born ready for it. She looked at him then, not with affection, but with measured gratitude. I just want peace, she said. I'll fight until you have it. Meanwhile, in a side room down the hall, Clarissa stood with her assistant, reading an email on his phone. It was from a financial consultant. Subject line, Elliot Ward's holdings in jeopardy. Below it, a brief summary. 2 members of the board were pushing for a vote of confidence. The PR backlash, the personal distractions, the public speech it had rattled investors. Clarissa exhaled slowly, not with fear, with purpose. She was preparing her move. That night, back in Harlem, Maya sat in her bedroom, her heels kicked off and her curls pinned high. Geraldine entered with a glass of sweet tea, placing it on the nightstand. How was the fortress? Still made of stone. Did you leave a crack? Maya smiled faintly. I didn't break. That's enough. Geraldine kissed her forehead. That's more than enough. Oh. But as Maya drifted to sleep, the rain tapping gently against the window, she knew this wasn't the end of the war. It was just the first real battle. Monday morning broke through a haze of mist that clung to the Manhattan skyline like a secret refusing to lift. Elliot stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, staring down at the city he once believed he controlled. Now, he wasn't so sure. He turned as Michael, his longtime legal advisor and friend, walked in carrying a tablet and a grim expression. They're moving, Michael said without ceremony. How many? Elliot asked. 3 confirmed. Possibly 5. They're citing destabilizing leadership, inappropriate personal entanglements. And this is rich ethics drift. Elliot nodded slowly, jaw tight. The ethics of standing up for a woman who was wronged? You knew they'd twist it. I underestimated how quickly they would. Michael placed the tablet down. There's going to be a formal vote in 10 days. If they get the 6th signature, it's done. And they replace me with some puppet who keeps their tax havens warm. Michael hesitated. What do you want to do? Elliot turned back to the glass. I want to remind them why my name is on that building. That same morning, Maya stood in front of the bathroom mirror tying her apron. The news was buzzing again, this time not about her past, but about Elliot's future. Headlines speculated. Billionaire on the brink. Ward family feud goes corporate. Love and leverage collide. Geraldine called from the kitchen. Baby, you sure about going in today? I've missed too many shifts already, Maya called back. People are talking. They've always talked. Geraldine appeared in the doorway, a look of worry shadowing her eyes. This is different. This ain't whispers behind pews, baby. This is loud, public, mean. Maya gave a tired smile. Then they'll just have to hear me walk right through it. By noon, Maya was behind the counter at the cafe, pouring coffee and dodging glances. A few patrons smiled. Others avoided eye contact entirely. But she stayed. Steady. Civil. Her own kind of protest. Around 2 p.m., a woman stepped up to the register a teacher Maya recognized from the nearby elementary school. I just wanted to say, the woman said, nervously smoothing her scarf. I watched everything on the news. And I think you're brave. I admire you. Maya blinked. Thank you. No, I mean it. You reminded me that telling the truth out loud isn't weakness. It's power. They exchanged a small smile, and then the line kept moving. But something shifted. The silence was beginning to speak for Maya instead of about her. Back at Ward and Kinley Holdings, Clarissa stood in the executive boardroom, surrounded by the oldest and wealthiest members of the leadership team, men with watches that cost more than some mortgages, women who spoke in clipped tones and remembered names like they were assets. I don't hate my nephew, Clarissa said, hands clasped loosely in front of her. But I do hate instability. He's compromised. Not because he cares, but because he's too proud to hide that he cares. A board member with silver hair cleared his throat. Elliot is a brilliant strategist. He was, Clarissa replied. Until a woman from Harlem became more important than our shareholders. A younger member spoke up. He's forcing conversations we've been too afraid to have. Then let him have them, Clarissa said sharply. But not while wearing our name. The room quieted. Outside, the sky rumbled. The storm was forming. That night, Elliot came by Maya's apartment without calling. She opened the door in sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, her hair tied back and her eyes tired. You look like you've been thinking too hard, she said, stepping aside. I'm being cornered, Elliot admitted. The board's preparing a vote. I figured, Maya said, handing him a glass of water. They've got a lot to lose if you stay, and I've got a lot to lose if I back down. He sat on the couch, rubbing his forehead. I didn't think I'd care this much about something that started with $500 and a fake relationship. Maya sat beside him. Neither did I. They were quiet for a moment, the hum of the fridge filling the space. I'm not asking you to fight my battles, Maya said gently. But I can't be the reason you lose your life's work. You're not the reason, he said, turning toward her. They are. She met his gaze. If you fall, I want you to know I didn't ask you to jump. Mel, Elliot leaned in, close enough to smell her lavender skin cream. You didn't ask, but I chose. And for the first time, Maya didn't argue. She accepted it. By Friday, Evelyn Ward had made her own move. She published an op-ed in the New York Times. It was titled, "What My Grandson Taught Me About Strength." In it, she defended Maya Williams by name. Not as a charity case. Not as a political symbol. But as a woman whose worth was proven not by status, but by character. She praised Elliot for using his platform and condemned the board for their cowardice. Legacy, she wrote, should not be protected by silence. It should be shaped by courage. The piece went viral. Talk shows quoted it. News anchors dissected it. Investors took notice. And the board? The board began to fracture. Later that night, Elliot met Evelyn at her townhouse. She poured him scotch in the library. You did it, he said. I reminded them who built this tower, she replied, sipping her drink. And now it's your turn to decide if you want to rule it. Or burn it down. Elliot smiled faintly. Maybe both. Evelyn chuckled. Just don't forget, darling, if you burn it, make sure Maya's not standing in the fire. It had been a long time since Maya wore a dress that hugged her waist. Years, maybe, but tonight wasn't about comfort. It was about showing up whole and unshaken, even when the ground underneath was cracking. The invitation had come by courier, an exclusive black tie fundraising gala hosted by the Ward Foundation. A tradition, an expectation, a test. Clarissa would be there. So would the board. So would the press. And Maya had decided she wouldn't flinch. Geraldine stood behind her as she adjusted the simple gold necklace around Maya's neck. You look like you own something, Geraldine said. Maya smiled faintly. Maybe I finally do. What's that? My place at the table. The gala shimmered with everything wealth could buy, light cascading from chandeliers, champagne flutes glittering, waiters weaving between conversations like silent dancers. It was beauty curated to distract, to dazzle, to mask the politics that pulsed underneath. Elliot met Maya at the front entrance. He wore a charcoal suit with a black bow tie, tailored within an inch of its life. But his eyes softened the moment they found her. You look like trouble, he said. She slipped her hand into his. Let's cause some. Together, they entered. Heads turned, whispers rose like steam, but no one dared speak loud enough to stop them. Clarissa was near the center of the room, encircled by donors. Her smile faltered when she spotted them. Maya didn't blink. The MC announced Elliot's arrival, followed by a formal introduction of Maya Williams as community health advocate and invited guest of honor. That term guest of honor hit the room like a stone in a still pond. Maya held Elliot's arm tighter. She wasn't here to be tolerated. She was here to be seen. The night moved forward in staged elegance. Speeches, toasts, donations pledged. But beneath the surface, conversations churned. Board members circled each other like chess pieces. Investors gauged the temperature. And somewhere in the swirl of tuxedos and taffeta, power began to shift. Evelyn Ward arrived fashionably late, as always, wearing a deep navy gown and a diamond pin that once belonged to her great-grandmother. When she greeted Maya, it was with a kiss on the cheek and a smile that held no pretense. You're more graceful than I ever was at your age, Evelyn said. Maya chuckled nervously. I doubt that. No, I was a nightmare, the old woman whispered, eyes twinkling. But I always knew when a room was ready to change. She glanced around. This one is. Later in the evening, Maya found herself briefly alone on the balcony. The city stretched out beneath her, alive and humming. She thought of the boy who died in that hospital bed, of the silence that followed her home, of the weight she carried quietly, for years. And now, she still carried it, but not alone. The door behind her creaked open. Clarissa. She stepped into the cool air, heels clicking against the stone. You wore red, Clarissa noted. Bold. Maya didn't turn. So did the blood I couldn't stop that night. Clarissa stood beside her, arms crossed. You've made quite a scene. I've made a stand, Maya corrected. Clarissa's voice was low. You don't belong in this world. Maya turned slowly to face her. That's where you're wrong. I've always belonged. I just stopped asking permission. Clarissa smiled, sharp, thin, venomous. And what will you do when Elliot loses everything because of you? Maya's voice didn't waver. Then he'll have built something new. With me. Not around me. Clarissa studied her. You don't scare easy. I never had the luxury. Clarissa looked back toward the ballroom. This was supposed to be his legacy. It still is, Maya said. He's just finally choosing who it serves. And with that, Maya walked past her, head high, steps sure. Back inside, Elliot approached the podium. The crowd quieted. He glanced at Maya, standing near the front now, eyes steady. I wasn't going to speak tonight, he began, but there are things that need to be said. He paused. My family's foundation was built with the intent to uplift communities, to honor stories, to preserve legacies. But in recent years, that intent has narrowed, lost itself in boardroom echoes. He looked around the room. But this year, we're returning to our roots. Tonight, the Ward Foundation is pledging $10 million towards scholarships for students of color pursuing careers in health and public service. A gasp. Applause. Flashbulbs. And I am proud to announce that Maya Williams will be joining the foundation as an advisor and community liaison. All eyes shifted to her. Maya didn't smile. She stepped forward slowly, nodded once. Then the room erupted. Not just for Elliot, but for her. For the woman who was no longer just someone's plus one. She had arrived as herself. As the gala began to wind down, Elliot found her again by the bar. Was that okay? He asked. She looked at him, soft and fierce at once. It was right. He took her hand. Whatever happens next, I want you there. Maya squeezed his fingers. Then let's get ready. Across the room, Clarissa stood frozen, watching the power shift away from her in real time. And for the first time in years, she felt something unfamiliar. Irrelevance. Tuesday morning began not with a sunrise, but with headlines. Ward Foundation restructures. Maya Williams appointed advisor. Billionaire Elliot Ward declares new direction for legacy. From nurse to advocate, Maya Williams breaks the mold. In Harlem, the cafe buzzed louder than the espresso machine. Regulars brought in copies of the Times, pointing to Maya's photo with pride. Like she was kin. One woman clutched her chest, muttering, "That girl's got God in her spine." Geraldine watched quietly from her corner table, tea in hand, heart full. She did it, she whispered to herself. She really did. In a high-rise boardroom across the city, not everyone shared the sentiment. Clarissa stood at the head of the long mahogany table, surrounded by 12 stone-faced board members. This is emotional governance, she declared. It's philanthropy as performance. He's compromising the entire infrastructure of Ward and Kinley for the sake of one woman's redemption arc. An older board member, Whitman Lowe, tilted his head. Clarissa, what Elliot's doing is actually reviving our public image. Investors love a good story, especially one about change. Another woman nodded. The foundation's move generated more positive press in 48 hours than we've had in 5 years. You call it performance, I call it smart. Clarissa clenched her teeth. They're in love. That won't last. And when it ends, we'll cross that bridge, Whitman said, gently cutting her off. Until then, we follow momentum. A younger member added, You want to force a vote now, you'll look bitter. Possibly racist. Wait it out. Clarissa stiffened. For the first time, her grip on the company wasn't absolute. And the board had just told her subtly, elegantly, that her time was no longer unquestioned. That same afternoon, Elliot and Maya sat in a quiet corner of a small, sunlit library in Brooklyn. Books towered around them, the scent of paper and time settling their nerves. I feel like I'm watching a dam crack open, Elliot said. Maya looked over the rim of her teacup. Because it is. Is it bad that I don't want to stop? She smiled. Not if you remember why you started. He studied her. People keep asking me if I'm doing all this for you. And are you? She asked softly. Elliot's answer came without hesitation. No. I'm doing it because of you. You reminded me I could. Maya leaned back, her heart steady. For the first time in a long time, her presence wasn't being defended, it was being honored. But not all fractures are visible. That evening, while reviewing updates to the Foundation's new community grant initiative, Maya noticed an email thread forwarded to her by mistake. Subject line, Candidate Vetting, October Luncheon. A forwarded comment from an unnamed source read, "Are we really parading the nurse around like a poster child? Let's hope she doesn't embarrass us." No signature, no context, just venom cloaked in professionalism. Maya stared at the screen. The weight of old ghosts came rushing back, the whispers, the assumptions, the measuring glances. She didn't cry. She didn't slam the laptop shut. She simply forwarded it to Elliot with a single line, "Still work to do." The next day, Maya showed up at the Foundation's office earlier than usual. She walked the floors, greeted the staff by name, and stopped by the intern's bullpen. She sat on the edge of a desk and asked, "What's the last thing you read that made you angry?" A young black woman looked up. "A policy that won't let undocumented kids access scholarship money." Maya nodded. "That's where we start." Another intern added, "The outreach events never reach past Midtown. Uptown kids don't even know we exist." Maya took out a notepad. "Then we take the gala to them." By noon, she had launched a new campaign, Legacy Doesn't Wait. It would fund mobile outreach vans, after-school mentorships, and community-led grant panels. Within 24 hours, her idea had a dedicated webpage, press interest, and grassroots support. Maya didn't ask permission. She built the space, and people followed. That night, Elliot watched her from the doorway of the Foundation's conference room as she animatedly explained the plan to two outreach coordinators. She was glowing not in makeup or lights but in purpose. Michael, his advisor, stood beside him. "She's better at this than any of us," Michael said. "I know," Elliot replied. "Does she know what she means to this place now?" "I think she's starting to." Michael hesitated. "And you? You still planning to step back from the company?" Elliot nodded. "After the vote. Either way, I'm done fighting for a seat at their table." Michael clapped a hand on his shoulder. "Then build your own." Later, walking home, Maya and Elliot strolled through Fort Tryon Park. The leaves were beginning to turn again. The same park where they'd taken their first real walk. "I got an anonymous email today," Maya said. Elliot stiffened. "Do I need to call legal?" "No," she said calmly. "It just reminded me that even when things change, some people don't. Then we make sure they're not the ones writing the future." Maya stopped walking, turned to him. "You really think we can change that much?" Elliot smiled. "I think we already are." She looked up at the stars, struggling to shine through the city haze. "Then let's keep going." They stood there for a moment, silent, hand in hand. Not as billionaire and former nurse. Not as media spectacle. Just two people, building something that didn't need permission to matter. Clarissa Ward stood before the portrait of her father in the study of the old family estate, arms crossed, her breath shallow. It was late. The kind of late that wrapped itself around you like a velvet noose, quiet, tight, and suffocating. A fire crackled in the hearth behind her, but the heat barely touched her. The walls of this house had always spoken of legacy, but tonight they whispered betrayal. Footsteps approached, soft and deliberate. "Mother," Elliot's voice cut through the stillness like a clean blade. Clarissa turned slowly, her expression unreadable. "You should have called." "This couldn't wait," he said, stepping into the room, his coat still damp from the rain. "The board meets in 48 hours. She poured herself a drink, neat scotch, aged and burning. "Are you here to ask for mercy or offer a confession?" "I'm here," he said, "to give you one last chance to stop." Clarissa's laugh was brittle. "Stop what? Speaking truth? Saving the company your recklessness is burying in sentimentality?" Elliot stepped closer. "You're not saving it. You're strangling it with fear and the illusion of control. You keep acting like this is about me. But it's not. It's about the world changing, and you not being able to bend with it." Her voice sharpened. "The world doesn't care about feelings. It cares about results, profits, structure, discipline. No, you care about those things, because they're the only tools you've ever known to survive." Clarissa's jaw twitched. "You taught me how to build walls," Elliot said, quieter now. "But Maya taught me how to build bridges." For the first time, something in Clarissa's expression faltered. He stepped closer. "This isn't just a boardroom war. This is our family finally facing what we've buried for decades." She turned away, but not before he saw it moisture at the corner of her eye. I fought for this company, she said. I bled for this name. When your father died, I was the one who held it all together. You think love is enough to carry it forward? No, Elliot said, but truth is. And with that, he left. Clarissa remained, the fire crackling behind her, alone with her portrait and her silence. Back in Harlem, Maya sat with Geraldine on the fire escape, the city's hum playing like background music to their evening ritual. 2 mugs of tea, 1 blanket. No need for words. I got a letter today, Maya said softly. Geraldine arched a brow. From? Cameron's mother. Geraldine's hands stilled around her cup. She wrote to say she'd seen me in the news, that she was angry for a long time, but she never knew what I'd done in those last moments. She thanked me for staying, even when everyone else had given up. Geraldine reached over, placed her hand over Maya's. You stayed because that's who you are, she whispered, not because you had to. Maya blinked quickly, swallowing the rising lump in her throat. I needed to hear that. You needed to forgive yourself, Geraldine corrected gently. A long pause. Then Maya asked, do you think I'm ready for what's coming? Geraldine squeezed her hand. Baby, you were ready before you even knew the war had started. The following morning, Elliot addressed the board for the last time before the vote. The conference room was tense, sterile. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows over expensive suits and guarded expressions. Elliot stood at the head of the table, not with notes, not with slides, just conviction. You already know what's at stake, he said. You've seen the numbers, the press, the backlash, but I'm asking you to see something more. He paused, letting the room settle. I'm asking you to see the future. A low murmur. For decades, we've built our wealth by staying safe, quiet, politically neutral. But neutral doesn't change anything. It just protects what already exists. He moved slowly along the table. If we want to stay relevant, not just solvent, we need to evolve. We need to stop being afraid of truth-tellers. We need to be them. A hand raised a board member Maya had met briefly at the gala. And if that truth costs us clients? Elliot nodded. Then we find clients who believe in where we're going, not just where we've been. Clarissa sat silent, arms folded. Whitman Lowe finally spoke. You're staking your legacy on this. Elliot met his gaze. No, I'm redefining it. Across the street, Maya waited in a cafe with a copy of the Post folded beside her. Her heart wasn't racing. It was steady now. Whatever happened in that room, she had already won something that no vote could revoke. Her voice. By mid-afternoon, Elliot returned. He walked into the cafe, loosened tie, sleeves rolled. Maya stood. Well? He didn't say anything, just smiled. It's yours, he said. Unanimous. Maya's breath left her in a single quiet laugh. Unanimous? She echoed. He nodded. Clarissa abstained, but she didn't block it. Maya touched his face, a gentle graze of her fingers along his jaw. Then we start, she whispered. For real. He leaned in, pressing his forehead to hers. For real. That evening, Clarissa sat in her office once more, flipping through the Foundation's newly printed quarterly plan. Maya's name was on the front page. She closed the folder slowly. The house wasn't hers alone anymore. But perhaps that wasn't the end of the world. The week following the board's unanimous vote felt like a quiet sunrise after a long storm. The Foundation's new direction made headlines in every major publication. Forbes, The Atlantic, even a Sunday feature in Parade. But for Maya, the truest shift came not from cameras or articles. It came from people. It came from silence, softening. She returned to work at the community clinic one morning, not as a shadow of scandal or a whispered name behind closed doors, but as someone who had earned her seat, and they treated her that way. Nurses hugged her, patients thanked her, and the young interns who once looked through her now listened like every word she said might be the one that changed their path. But nothing prepared her for the message waiting on her locker. A handwritten note slipped through the slats. She opened it with steady fingers. You probably don't remember me. I was Cameron's attending physician the night he died. I watched you do more in 3 minutes than I did in 30. And I'm sorry. I didn't say anything then. I'm saying it now. Thank you. Maya stared at the note for a long time before folding it neatly and sliding it into her pocket. She didn't cry, but something healed. Later that afternoon, she stood outside the foundation building downtown, watching as a new banner was hoisted above the entrance. Legacies for everyone. Elliot stood beside her, sunglasses on, hands in his pockets. We're making enemies, he said quietly. Good, Maya replied. Means we're doing something real. He glanced at her. You want to meet one of them? She arched a brow. What do you mean? She asked for you. He tilted his head toward the car waiting by the curb. Inside sat Clarissa Ward. The ride to Clarissa's private townhouse was quiet. No music, no small talk. Just the kind of silence that feels like a carefully set stage. Maya followed Elliot through the ornate front doors, the same ones she'd once walked through in fear. Today, her steps made no apology. Clarissa waited in the parlor, alone. No pearls, no armor, just a cream blouse, slacks, and a whiskey glass untouched. Maya, she said, thank you for coming. Maya nodded. I figured if I can face Congress, I can face you. A small smile touched Clarissa's lips. Elliot excused himself, leaving the two women in the room past and present, silence and reckoning. Clarissa gestured to the couch across from her. Maya sat, legs crossed, posture poised. I won't waste your time, Clarissa began. I was wrong. Maya blinked. Once. Which part? Clarissa looked down at her hands, then back up. All of it. A pause. I was raised to believe that loyalty was proven in silence. That dignity meant keeping things behind closed doors. But I've watched you walk through fire, and not once ask for pity. Maya's voice was calm, deliberate. I didn't ask for anything. I know, Clarissa said. That's what makes this harder. Lay. She stood and crossed to the window, gazing out at the city that had once belonged solely to people like her. My father built this legacy with iron, and I tried to preserve it in glass. But glass breaks. Iron rusts. What you're helping Elliot build, it bends. And maybe that's the only kind of legacy that survives now. Maya sat in silence, letting Clarissa's words settle. I can't erase how I treated you, Clarissa said softly, but I can say thank you, and I can start trying to be better. Maya looked at her. You don't owe me thanks. You owe yourself truth. Clarissa turned to face her fully. And you, she said, owe no one an apology for belonging. Maya stood. I never did. They didn't hug. There were no tears. Just a shift. Small, but real. That evening, Maya and Elliot walked hand in hand through the park, where the community grant program was launching its first outdoor event. Free checkups, nutrition booths, school supply giveaways. The music played low. Kids danced near the fountain. Elders sipped sweet tea beneath string lights. A young boy tugged on Maya's dress. Are you the nurse lady from TV? He asked, wide-eyed. Maya crouched to his level. I am. He grinned. My sister wants to be like you. Maya looked over to see a teenage girl watching from a distance, shy but proud. Well, Maya said. Then she's already amazing. The boy nodded solemnly and skipped away. Elliot watched the whole exchange with a quiet reverence. You're changing the temperature in rooms just by entering them, he said. Maya gave a half smile. I don't want to be the room's temperature. What do you want to be? The reason it gets warmer. He leaned in, resting his forehead to hers. You already are. You. Later that night, at Maya's apartment, Geraldine tucked a blanket around her knees and said, You know what you're doing now, right? Maya raised a brow. What's that? You're not just surviving anymore. Maya looked toward the window where the city lights blinked like old memories. No, she said quietly. I'm living, and she meant it. In the corporate offices of Ward and Kinley, a bronze plaque was installed beside the front elevator. It read, To those who speak, even when they're told not to. The first chill of autumn rolled into Manhattan with the kind of quiet determination Maya had come to respect. The air was crisp, and the leaves that framed the city parks wore amber and gold like old medals. It was the kind of morning where change felt both intimate and inevitable. Maya stood in front of the mirror in Elliot's penthouse, adjusting the collar of her blazer. It was deep navy with a subtle pattern, professional but grounded. She took a deep breath, smoothing her palms down the lapels. Today wasn't just another meeting. It was the first one, her first as an official voting advisor on the Ward Foundation Executive Committee. You ready to shake the room? Elliot asked. entering behind her, nodding his tie. "I'm not here to shake it," she said. "I'm here to reshape it." He smiled at her in the mirror. "Same thing." "No." They arrived together, intentional, public, unbothered. At the Foundation's glass tower, Maya entered not as someone's guest but with her own keycard, her own name etched onto the staff registry. The security guard nodded respectfully, and the receptionist greeted her with a smile that didn't feel forced. She was no longer the story people whispered about. She was the one writing it. The boardroom on the 42nd floor was brighter than usual. The large windows revealed the Hudson glinting in the distance, and a carafe of warm apple cider sat on the sideboard, someone's effort at seasonal charm. When Maya entered, conversations paused briefly before resuming. Not because of scandal, but out of respect. Whitman Lowe stood. "Let's begin." The meeting covered updates on new outreach initiatives, funding allocations, and a potential partnership with the public school district. Maya listened carefully, took notes, and asked thoughtful questions. But it wasn't until the agenda shifted to community grant oversight that the room leaned in. Clarissa Ward, seated at the end of the table, cleared her throat. "We've received over 200 applications in the first 72 hours. Impressive volume. The question is how to maintain integrity in selection." Maya spoke up. "Integrity isn't just about background checks and paperwork. It's about understanding why these people are applying in the first place." Several heads turned. She continued. "We need a review panel that includes voices from the communities we claim to serve. People with lived experience, not just credentials." A murmur of consideration followed. Whitman nodded slowly. "You proposing we bring in external reviewers?" Maya met his gaze. "I'm proposing we give those communities a seat at this table. Because if legacy is for everyone, then so is leadership." Clarissa was silent for a moment before saying, "That's bold." "It's overdue," Maya replied. By the time the meeting adjourned, the motion had passed with only one abstention. Progress didn't always roar. Sometimes it was a quiet yes in a room that used to say no. Later that afternoon, Maya visited the new mobile clinic parked outside a community center in East Harlem. The line stretched around the block. Parents, seniors, students, volunteers moved with purpose. Nurses smiled. A little girl in pigtails clutched a stuffed bear while her mother filled out forms. Maya walked through it all slowly, speaking with each team member, asking names, listening to stories. Near the end of the line, an older man wearing a navy beanie and worn denim coat stood with a cane. "You're the one from the TV," he said when she approached. Maya smiled gently. "I suppose I am." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded photograph. It was of his daughter, maybe 10 years old, smiling with her arms around a small dog. "She died last year. Asthma. No insurance. Closest clinic was 3 bus transfers away." Maya's throat tightened. "I'm so sorry." "I'm not looking for sorry," he said. "I'm looking for change, and you look like it." She nodded slowly. "That's the goal." He smiled, toothless and warm. "Then don't stop." That evening, back at Elliot's apartment, Maya curled up on the sofa with a blanket draped over her shoulders and a steaming bowl of soup in her lap. Elliot walked in carrying 2 mugs of cocoa. "You were incredible today," he said, handing her one. "I was heard today," she corrected. "Even better." He sat beside her, pulling her legs into his lap. "You ever think," she began softly, "about how none of this was supposed to happen? All the time. I was supposed to stay quiet, fade out, be forgotten." Elliot brushed a thumb along her ankle. "But you didn't." "No," she said, staring into the steam rising from her cocoa. "And I won't." A beat passed. "I got another letter today," she added, "from a young girl in South Carolina. Said she saw me on the news and now wants to go into medicine, wants to make people feel safe." Elliot smiled. "You're building more than a foundation, Maya." She looked at him. "You're building legacy." Madian. The next morning, on the 6 train, a teenage boy in a hoodie tapped Maya's shoulder shyly. "Hey, you're Miss Williams, right?" She nodded. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his backpack. "I wrote a poem about people who don't quit. You want to read it?" Maya unfolded the note as the train clattered down the tunnel. It read, "Some people speak soft and still shake the sky. Their truth doesn't shout, it just doesn't lie. They carry the weight others try to ignore, and somehow, they still open doors." Maya looked at him, eyes soft. "Thank you," she said. "This is beautiful." He shrugged. My English teacher made us write about courage. I thought of you. As he got off at the next stop, Maya sat quietly with the poem in her hand. No plaque, no speech, just truth, carried on a page. The storm hit just after dusk. Not metaphorically an actual storm. Sheets of rain drummed against the city, wind howling down avenues, blowing umbrellas inside out and soaking overcoats in seconds. Streetlights flickered, shopkeepers pulled down metal grates, and the usually unshakable rhythm of Manhattan paused. At the Ward Foundation's downtown headquarters, the final meeting of the day was wrapping up when the lights blinked, once, twice, then cut out completely. Total darkness. A beat of silence. Then, a ripple of uneasy laughter. "We have backup generators," Whitman Lowe said, his voice calm in the dark. But 5 seconds later, a security guard appeared with a flashlight and a furrowed brow. "Generators failed," he said. "Citywide outage. Some kind of transformer overload. They say it's hitting multiple boroughs." Someone muttered, "This is ridiculous." Clarissa Ward, seated stiffly near the head of the table, didn't speak. She reached into her purse, pulled out a tiny flashlight, and clicked it on without a word. Maya, seated beside her, caught the glint of the light bouncing off Clarissa's pearls. "Looks like we'll have to finish this, the old-fashioned way," Maya said lightly, flipping open her notebook. Elliot gave her a quick smile in the dark. A single emergency light hummed in the hallway. It cast the room in shadows, making everyone appear both smaller and more vulnerable. And in that dimness, something shifted. Without screens or PowerPoints or distractions, the room began to really talk. About funding priorities. About accessibility. About what community actually meant when the world got quiet. Clarissa, her voice thinner than usual, offered a rare admission. "My father never thought the foundation would survive without prestige." Maya asked, "And you?" Clarissa looked around the dim room. "I think prestige is a lie people tell themselves when they're afraid of being ordinary." "La." Maya's voice was steady. "Maybe ordinary isn't the enemy." Elliot leaned forward. "Sometimes it's where the real work gets done." They stayed another hour. Talking. Listening. No egos. No hierarchy. Just a group of people trying, honestly, to do better. By the time the lights flickered back on, something unspoken had taken root. Across town, in a modest brownstone in Harlem, Geraldine lit 3 candles and set them on the kitchen table. She stirred soup over the gas stove, thanked God for old appliances, and hummed a tune from her childhood. When Maya walked in, soaked from the rain, Geraldine handed her a towel and said, "Sit, eat, let the world wait." Maya sank into the chair, exhaustion in her bones. They didn't speak much, didn't need to. In the glow of candlelight and the comfort of silence, Maya felt something ancient and grounding, a reminder of where she'd come from, of the women who came before her mothers, nurses, caretakers who built everything they had with almost nothing. After dinner, she checked her phone. A single voicemail had come in while the power was out. It was from Dr. Weiss, the former hospital administrator who had resigned quietly years ago after the Cameron incident. She pressed play. "Maya, it's Eric Weiss. I've been watching, reading. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want to say, I should have spoken up. I should have had your back. What happened that night, it wasn't just wrong. It was a failure. Of courage. I carry it with me every day. Pause. If you're ever willing to talk, I'm here. No press. No politics. Just human to human." Maya sat in silence after the message ended. For a moment, she felt the tremble of old pain, but then she exhaled. The world was finally starting to speak truths it had buried for too long. And even if forgiveness wasn't on the table yet, reckoning was. The next morning, the foundation's lobby was crowded with residents from across the city. The power outage had sparked interest in their emergency outreach proposal, and community leaders came to offer partnerships. Maya stood at the front, clipboard in hand, delegating, connecting, solving. Elliot stood at her side, fielding press requests and texting donors. "Feels like a storm shook things loose," he said. "Sometimes that's the only way," Maya replied. "Break the grid, start fresh." "Oh," a woman from the Bronx approached Older, dressed in scrubs, eyes tired but burning. "I've got a church basement and 20 volunteers," she said. "We'll open it for overnight care during blackouts. "You in?" Maya grinned. "Absolutely." They exchanged contact info and a hug that felt more like alliance than affection. Elliot whispered, "You ever think about running for office?" Maya laughed. "No, but I think about building something the politicians can't ignore." He nodded. "That's more powerful anyway." That evening, Maya sat at the foundation's rooftop garden. The sky had cleared. The stars peeked through, tentative but present. She pulled out the poem the teenager had given her on the train and read it again. Then, with a pen, she added a line to the bottom, "And when the lights go out, they are the ones who still shine." A soft wind moved through her curls. She wasn't the same woman who'd once begged for silence in a hospital hallway. She was the storm now, the light, and the room that no longer needed permission to open its doors. The auditorium was packed. Rows of folding chairs stretched from the stage all the way to the back, filled with students in uniforms, elders in wheelchairs, church leaders in Sunday best, single mothers in Target jeans, and city officials in tailored suits who looked slightly out of place. The banner above the stage read simply, "Legacy is for everyone, Community Town Hall." It was the first of its kind, a gathering hosted by the Ward Foundation in one of the city's oldest public schools, where discussions weren't filtered through corporate PR but lived voices, open mics, and real people. Maya stood backstage, mic in hand, dressed in a soft gray pantsuit. No podium, no teleprompter, just presence. Geraldine stood nearby, holding a paper program, beaming like a grandmother watching her child graduate. Elliot was off to the side, arms crossed, eyes soft. He wasn't the headliner today. He didn't need to be. Today wasn't about him. It was about her. A staffer gave Maya the cue. She stepped out to warm applause, not explosive, but earnest. The kind of welcome that says, "We see you, and we're glad you're here." She smiled, waited for the room to still. "I was never supposed to be standing here," she began. "And not because I wasn't smart, or capable, or ready, but because for a long time, systems were designed to convince people like me we didn't belong." A few murmurs, nods. "I was a nurse, a caregiver. The person who caught the patient when everyone else had let go. I held hands that shook, and I whispered through fear. But no one asked what I feared. No one asked what I dreamed." She paused. "Until now." The room leaned in. "Legacy," she continued, "isn't built by perfect people. It's built by persistent people. It's not built in silence. It's carved out of discomfort, sweat, and sometimes tears. It's built when we stop asking for a seat at the table and start building our own." Scattered applause. "And the table?" She smiled. "It's round now. Everyone gets a voice. Everyone gets fed." A standing ovation rose not all at once, but in waves, like the tide, like healing. And Maya let it wash over her. After the event, Maya found herself in a small classroom repurposed as a green room, sipping water and answering questions from two high school girls who had snuck in past the volunteers. "Do you think it's harder to be heard when you're black and a woman?" one asked. Maya chuckled. "I think it's harder when the people in charge think listening is a favor instead of a responsibility." The girls laughed. One whispered, "I want to be like you." Maya leaned in. "Don't be like me. Be louder. Be bolder. Be someone I look up to one day." Later that evening, she walked the city with Elliot. No bodyguards, no reporters. They passed the old hospital where she once worked. The entrance lights flickered gently, like an old lamp trying its best. She stopped and stared. "I almost quit everything right there," she said. Elliot took her hand. "But you didn't." "No," she said. "I broke instead, and then I rebuilt." They stood there for a long time, not speaking, just breathing. The next morning, a small article appeared in the New York Times, buried under larger headlines. It was titled, "From Silence to Structure, Maya Williams and the Blueprint for Inclusive Power." A single quote from her speech was bolded beneath the headline. "You can't build a future if half the builders are left outside." At the Ward Foundation, the office buzzed. A new intern orientation was underway. A bronze plaque had just been mounted in the lobby's east wing, in honor of the caregivers, the truth-tellers, and the ones who stayed when it got quiet. Geraldine came by with lunch for Maya, fried catfish sandwiches wrapped in foil and love. "You gonna rest now?" she asked. Maya raised an eyebrow. Rest? Geraldine laughed. That's what I thought. That night, Elliot invited Maya to dinner, but not at a restaurant. At his family's country estate, Clarissa greeted them at the door, not in pearls or heels, but in a soft cardigan and garden shoes. Her hair was loose, her tone unguarded. I made pot roast, she said. I wasn't sure if you ate red meat, but I figured, ask first, correct later. Maya smiled. Red meat's fine, long as there's cornbread. Clarissa's lips curled upward. I'll get the biscuits. The dinner was awkward at first. Silverware clinked, conversations tiptoed. But somewhere between the peach cobbler and the laughter that came from a story about young Elliot crashing a golf cart, the distance softened. Clarissa even touched Maya's arm at one point, saying quietly, "Thank you. Not for fixing him, but for helping him choose to grow." Maya replied, "He did the work. I just reminded him he had a reason to." At the end of the night, as the fire cracked in the library and Elliot poured them each a glass of wine, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. Maya froze. "Don't worry," he laughed. "It's not that kind of box." She exhaled in half laughter. He opened it to reveal a vintage fountain pen, the kind you'd pass down, the kind you don't just buy, you earn. "This was my grandfather's," Elliot said. "He used it to sign the first checks for the foundation." Maya stared at it, unsure. "I want you to use it," he said. "To write the new bylaws, the new mission statement, the new everything." She took the pen. It was heavier than she expected, but it felt right in her hand. "Let's write something they can't erase," she whispered. Elliot touched her hand. "No," he said. "Let's write something they wouldn't dare try." Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees. No storm, no silence, just the sound of a world slowly learning how to listen. Maya Williams didn't just get her seat at the table. She rebuilt the room and left the door wide open. This story reminds us that true legacy isn't inherited, it's earned through courage, truth, and compassion. Maya Williams didn't wait for permission to be seen. She stood up in a world designed to overlook her. And by doing so, she redefined what power, leadership, and justice look like. The lesson is clear. When one person dares to speak with integrity, they don't just change their own life, they make space for others to rise, too.